My beloved child, Archangel Michael says there is a conversation that happened behind closed doors, a conversation that carried your name into a place where you were never physically present, yet your presence was felt in every word that was spoken. Someone believed they could convince your person to erase you from their heart, accept another relationship, and walk toward a marriage that looked perfect from the outside. But what your person said in that moment revealed something so deep that even the person making the request could no longer pretend they did not understand the truth. Something shifted the moment your person heard your name connected to the word forget, because forgetting you was never as simple as someone else imagined. They had tried to remain calm, they had tried to act unaffected, and they had tried to convince themselves that distance had weakened what they felt for you. Yet when someone directly told them to forget you and marry another person, every hidden emotion rose to the surface at once, and their response changed the entire direction of the conversation. Your person did not immediately argue, shout, or create a dramatic scene, because the strongest reactions are sometimes the quietest ones. They became completely still, and that silence made the other person realize that they had touched something much deeper than an ordinary memory. Your person finally spoke with a seriousness that surprised everyone around them, and the words they chose made it clear that you were not simply someone they could remove from their life because another option had appeared. Type Amen 111 if this message resonates with your heart. Your person said that marriage could never be used as a replacement for feelings that had not been resolved, because entering another person's life while secretly carrying someone else's presence would only create pain for everyone involved. They admitted that people had been encouraging them to move forward, to settle down, and to choose the easier path, but inside themselves they knew that pretending everything was finished would not make it finished. That confession created a silence in the room that nobody knew how to break. Someone tried to explain that time would eventually make them forget you, and your person listened without interrupting. They were told that you might already be moving on, that perhaps you did not care anymore, and that another person could provide the stability they supposedly needed. But your person responded with a calmness that revealed they had already considered every one of those possibilities and still could not force their heart to become indifferent. The person speaking to them believed the solution was simple, because from the outside your connection may have looked complicated, delayed, or uncertain. They believed introducing a new person, arranging a future, and creating enough distance would eventually bury the emotions your person carried for you. Instead, the conversation forced your person to confront the one truth they had been avoiding, which was that they had never truly released you. Your person remembered moments that nobody else knew about, small details that seemed meaningless to everyone except them. They remembered your voice, your expressions, the way you reacted to certain things, the moments when you were unexpectedly kind, and even the difficult moments that had left both of you confused. Those memories did not disappear when someone demanded that they forget you, and instead they became stronger because your person finally understood that memory was not the real issue. Type Amen 333 if your heart feels connected to this message. The real issue was unfinished emotion, and your person knew it. They realized that they had been trying to place a temporary silence over something that still existed inside them, hoping that silence would eventually become closure. But when another person suggested marriage as the final solution, your person suddenly understood that marriage could not be used to escape an unresolved heart. There was a moment when your person looked directly at the person who had been advising them and said that they could not promise another individual a lifetime while secretly wishing they were somewhere else. Those words were not spoken to create drama, and they were not spoken to impress anyone. They were spoken because your person finally reached the point where pretending had become more painful than admitting the truth. The person who expected your person to agree became uncomfortable. They had imagined a simple conversation where your person would accept the suggestion, move forward, and eventually stop thinking about you. Instead, they heard an answer that revealed that your person had been carrying more emotion than anyone realized. Your person explained that you had affected them in a way they could not easily describe. They admitted that even during periods when they tried to focus on other things, certain memories of you would return without warning. They could hear a familiar song, visit a familiar place, see something that reminded them of you, or experience an ordinary moment that suddenly brought your presence back into their thoughts. Type Amen 777 if you believe what is meant for you cannot be erased by pressure. The conversation became more serious when someone suggested that your person should simply choose the person who was available rather than continue holding space for someone whose situation was uncertain. Your person understood the logic behind those words, but they also understood that a logical decision does not always heal an emotional truth. They refused to make a lifelong promise simply because someone else considered it convenient. That was the moment everything changed. The person advising them realized that your person was not confused about you at all, because confusion would have sounded different. Your person was conflicted about circumstances, timing, fear, and uncertainty, but the feeling connected to you remained surprisingly clear. Your person admitted that they had tried to convince themselves that you were no longer important. They had attempted to reduce your significance by focusing on your absence, your silence, the distance between you, and everything that had gone wrong. Yet the harder they tried to minimize you, the more they realized that your absence had actually shown them how significant your presence had been. The person listening to this began to understand that asking your person to forget you had produced the opposite result. Instead of erasing your memory, the demand forced your person to examine it. Instead of making your person move toward another relationship, it made them question whether they were ready to give another person a place that their heart was still reserving for you. Type Amen 888 if this message speaks to the hidden part of your heart. Your person then revealed something they had not wanted to admit before. They said that there were things they wished they had handled differently with you, moments when pride had controlled their behavior, moments when fear had made them withdraw, and moments when they could have spoken honestly but chose silence instead. They understood that some of the distance between you was not created because the connection meant nothing, but because they did not know how to handle what they felt. They remembered times when you may have wondered whether they cared at all. They remembered moments when their behavior seemed cold, confusing, distant, or inconsistent. And deep inside, they knew that their inability to communicate properly had created wounds that neither of you deserved. The person encouraging marriage tried to redirect the conversation toward practical matters. They talked about family expectations, social pressure, stability, age, timing, reputation, and the comfort of choosing someone who was already available. Your person listened, but this time they did not allow those external expectations to decide what their heart was supposed to feel. Your person said they would rather face uncertainty honestly than create certainty through a false promise. That sentence carried more weight than anyone expected. It revealed that they were no longer willing to sacrifice another person's emotional future just to make their own life appear settled. Type Amen 1212 if you believe honesty is stronger than forced decisions. Something inside your person had changed before this conversation even happened. They had been quietly reflecting on their life, their choices, and the people they had allowed to influence them. They had started recognizing the difference between peace and convenience, between genuine connection and external approval, and between moving forward and simply running away from what still needed to be faced. You were part of that reflection. Your person may not have spoken your name every day, but your presence remained connected to many of their private thoughts. They remembered what they learned through knowing you, what they discovered about themselves through the connection, and how certain experiences with you changed the way they understood love and vulnerability. They also realized that they had been unfair to themselves. They had tried to become emotionally detached because detachment looked easier than vulnerability. They had convinced themselves that being strong meant feeling nothing, but eventually they understood that strength could also mean admitting what remained inside their heart. The person who wanted them to marry someone else could see the change happening. They recognized that your person was no longer speaking from fear. They were speaking from a place of personal responsibility, and that made it impossible to manipulate the conversation into the outcome someone else wanted. Type Amen 444 if this message gives you hope and strength. Your person said that if they ever entered a marriage, they wanted to enter it with a completely honest heart. They did not want to wake up years later and realize they had chosen someone because they were pressured to forget another person. They did not want another individual to spend their life wondering why their partner seemed emotionally distant, and they did not want you to become a secret memory that continued controlling their decisions. Those words changed the atmosphere completely. The person who had been pushing them toward marriage finally realized that this was no longer about choosing between two people. It was about your person's right to make a decision without pretending that their emotions did not exist. Your person then became even more honest. They admitted that they had wondered whether you still thought about them, whether you had moved forward, and whether there was any possibility that the connection could ever be understood differently. They had kept those thoughts private because admitting them would mean admitting that you still mattered. They also acknowledged that silence had created assumptions. You may have believed their silence meant indifference, while they may have been using silence to protect themselves from vulnerability. The longer the silence continued, the more complicated everything became, but the emotion underneath it did not disappear. Type Amen 555 if this message resonates with the journey of your heart. The most surprising part came when your person said they did not want someone else to compete with you. They did not want another person to become a replacement, a distraction, or a way to prove that they had moved on. They understood that a new relationship deserved to begin without the shadow of an unfinished connection hanging over it. That statement shocked the person who had been encouraging the marriage. They had expected your person to say that you were part of the past. Instead, your person described you as someone whose place in their story could not be erased simply because circumstances had changed. Your person was not promising that everything would suddenly become easy. They were not pretending that distance, mistakes, timing, or misunderstandings did not exist. They were simply refusing to lie about what remained inside them. And that honesty became the turning point. For the first time, your person was no longer trying to make everyone else comfortable at the expense of their own emotional truth. Type Amen 666 if you feel that truth always finds its way into the light. There is another layer to this message that you need to understand. Sometimes people around a connection believe they are helping when they encourage one person to move on quickly, but they cannot see the private emotional history that exists between two people. They see silence and assume the story has ended, they see distance and assume the feelings are gone, and they see another available person and assume that person can simply take the place of someone else. But your person knows that hearts do not work according to outside schedules. They know that a person can disappear physically while remaining emotionally significant. They know that years can pass while one unfinished conversation continues living inside the mind. Your person has learned this through experience. They tried to replace emotional uncertainty with practical decisions, but each attempt eventually brought them back to the same realization. You were not simply a chapter they could close because someone else told them to close it. Type Amen 999 if this message touches something you have been silently carrying. There was also a private moment after the conversation when your person was alone. They replayed everything that had been said, and for the first time they allowed themselves to think about you without immediately pushing the thoughts away. They remembered your face, your energy, your presence, and the emotional intensity they had experienced around you. They realized that the pressure to forget you had actually revealed how much they had been trying to suppress. They understood that if someone had simply asked them to move forward naturally, their answer might have been different, but being told to erase you made them recognize that they were not ready to do that. Your person then made a quiet decision. They decided that before making any permanent commitment to anyone else, they needed to become honest with themselves about you and about what they truly wanted. That decision did not necessarily mean immediate action. It meant awareness, and awareness was the first crack in the wall they had built around their emotions. Type Amen 222 if you believe clarity is entering your life at the right time. Your person started thinking about what they would say if they ever had another opportunity to speak openly with you. They imagined explaining why they disappeared, why they stayed silent, why they acted differently than they felt, and why they allowed outside voices to influence decisions that should have belonged to them. They knew that explanations could not erase the past, but they also knew that honesty could finally give meaning to what had remained confusing. They remembered the moments when you needed clarity and received silence instead. They remembered how easy it had been to postpone difficult conversations. They remembered telling themselves that they would deal with everything later, only to discover that later had turned into months or even years of emotional distance. Now they understood that time had not solved the problem. It had only hidden it beneath layers of routine, responsibilities, and distractions. The moment someone demanded that they forget you, those layers disappeared. Type Amen 777 if you believe what is hidden can still be healed. Your person also began to understand something about the person who wanted them to marry. That person may have had genuine intentions, but they were trying to solve an emotional situation through an external arrangement. They believed marriage could create certainty, but your person knew that certainty without emotional honesty could become another form of confusion. Your person refused to use another person's love as medicine for their own unresolved feelings. They refused to make a promise simply because everyone around them believed it was time. They wanted any future relationship to be chosen freely, honestly, and without pretending. That is why their response changed everything. It was not dramatic because they wanted attention, and it was not rebellious because they wanted to hurt anyone. It was powerful because it was honest. Type Amen 1010 if you are ready for honesty, clarity, and peace. Your person said they would rather wait until their heart was clear than rush into a marriage that could later become filled with regret. They understood that a wedding could be planned in months, but emotional consequences could last for years. They did not want to create a beautiful beginning built upon an unresolved ending. That statement made the people around them reconsider everything they thought they knew. The person who had been encouraging them to forget you realized that your person was not refusing marriage because they were afraid of commitment. They were refusing to commit to someone while emotionally attached to someone else. Your person had finally drawn a boundary. They were no longer willing to allow family expectations, social pressure, fear of loneliness, or the desire to appear settled to control their future. And somewhere within that boundary was the truth about you. They still cared. Type Amen 1111 if this message resonates deeply within your spirit. Your person may have wondered whether you would ever know about this conversation. They may have wondered whether the truth would reach you, whether you would believe them, or whether too much time had already passed. But even without knowing what they were thinking, something important had already changed within them. They had stopped running from the memory of you. They had stopped pretending that another relationship could automatically erase an old connection. They had stopped allowing other people to define what your presence meant to them. The next stage was not about chasing. It was about becoming honest, emotionally mature, and prepared to face the consequences of their choices. Your person knew that if they ever came back into your life, they could not return with the same silence, confusion, and half-truths that had existed before. They would have to come with clarity. They would have to explain themselves. They would have to accept that rebuilding trust takes patience. Type Amen 333 if you are ready for a new chapter built on truth. Your person also realized that they could not demand that you wait for them. This was one of the hardest realizations because they knew their own hesitation had consequences. They understood that while they were processing their feelings, you had your own life, your own emotions, your own healing, and your own path. That realization made their feelings even more serious. They could no longer assume that you would simply remain emotionally available whenever they decided to return. They knew that if they wanted another opportunity, they would need to earn it through consistent actions rather than emotional promises. This was the maturity that had been missing before. Your person was beginning to understand that love is not only about feelings, but also about responsibility, communication, respect, timing, and the courage to make honest choices. Type Amen 444 if you believe real change begins with responsibility. The person who had suggested marriage eventually stopped pushing. They realized your person had made their position clear. The conversation that began as an attempt to erase you had ended by revealing exactly how much you still mattered. Your person did not need to announce everything publicly. They did not need to convince everyone. Their own decision was enough. For the first time, they were comfortable allowing others to misunderstand them rather than betraying their own emotional truth. That was the real victory hidden inside the conversation. Nobody could force your person to feel differently simply by presenting another option. Type Amen 555 if you believe your story is still unfolding. There is something else your person has been carrying quietly. They have wondered whether the connection between you was meant to teach them something, and they have started recognizing that meeting you changed the way they understand emotional intimacy. You exposed parts of their personality they had kept hidden, including their fear of vulnerability, their difficulty expressing emotions, and their tendency to withdraw when feelings became intense. They may have blamed circumstances in the past. They may have blamed timing, distance, misunderstandings, or other people. But now they are beginning to see their own role in what happened. That realization is uncomfortable, but it is also necessary. Because once someone accepts their responsibility, they can finally change the behavior that created the distance. Type Amen 666 if this message is bringing clarity to your heart. Your person has also started separating genuine desire from temporary loneliness. They do not want to return to you simply because they feel alone. They want to understand whether the connection can exist in a healthier, more honest, and more stable form. This distinction matters. It means your person is not simply reacting to emotion, but learning how to handle emotion responsibly. They are becoming more aware of what they would need to change if they ever received another opportunity with you. They know that words alone would not be enough. Type Amen 777 if you believe actions will reveal what words cannot. The pressure to marry someone else created a strange awakening. Your person suddenly saw the future that might have happened if they had simply followed everyone else's expectations. They imagined standing beside someone while a part of their heart remained somewhere else, and that image made them uncomfortable enough to stop pretending. They realized that choosing another person without emotional closure would not only affect them. It would affect the innocent person they were being asked to marry, because that person would deserve someone who was fully present. Your person refused to build a future on emotional dishonesty. That decision may have disappointed people around them, but it gave your person something they had been missing for a long time. It gave them peace. Type Amen 888 if peace is more valuable to you than appearances. And now, my beloved child, hear this part carefully within the spirit of this fictional inspirational message. You do not need to chase anyone to prove that you deserve to be remembered. You do not need to compete with another person, force a conversation, or constantly search for signs. What is meant to be understood will become clearer through actions, honesty, and time. Your responsibility is not to control another person's choices, but to protect your own peace while allowing life to reveal what is genuine. Type Amen 999 if you choose peace over confusion. Your person has reached a point where the idea of forgetting you no longer feels like freedom. It feels like denying a part of their own emotional journey. They understand that remembering someone does not automatically mean returning to them, but it does mean acknowledging the impact that person had. And you had an impact. You changed something within them that they cannot simply erase because another person suggested marriage. They may have tried to hide it. They may have tried to rationalize it. They may have even tried to convince themselves that enough distance would make everything disappear. But the conversation exposed what they had been hiding from themselves. Type Amen 1212 if you believe hidden truths can become clear at the right time. Your person now knows that if they ever speak to you again, they cannot approach you casually. They cannot pretend nothing happened. They cannot act as though the past was meaningless. They would need to acknowledge the distance. They would need to acknowledge the silence. They would need to acknowledge the moments where their choices hurt you. And most importantly, they would need to show that they have changed. That is the difference between simply missing someone and being ready to rebuild something meaningful. Type Amen 222 if you believe genuine change speaks through actions. There may come a moment when the truth of this entire situation becomes visible in a way you never expected. It may not happen through a dramatic announcement. It may happen through a simple conversation, an unexpected message, an honest confession, or a decision that finally makes sense of everything that came before. The important part is not the drama. The important part is the clarity. Your person has already taken one important step internally by refusing to let someone else decide what they should feel. Now their future choices will reveal whether that internal realization becomes external action. Type Amen 333 if you are trusting the process without forcing it. The person who asked your person to forget you thought they were creating an ending. Instead, they created a moment of truth. They thought they were closing a door, but they accidentally showed your person how much that door still mattered. Your person realized that some connections cannot be dismissed with one sentence. They require honesty, reflection, healing, and sometimes the courage to admit that the heart did not follow the plan. That is why their response changed everything. Type Amen 444 if this message has reached your heart. My beloved child, remember that this message is offered as spiritual storytelling and encouragement, not as a guaranteed prediction of another person's private thoughts or future actions. Let it remind you that you deserve relationships where you are chosen freely, communicated with honestly, and respected without pressure or manipulation. Do not measure your worth by whether someone returns. Do not measure your importance by whether someone remembers you. Your value exists independently of another person's decision. Type Amen 555 if you choose to remember your own worth. There is a beautiful strength in refusing to force what belongs to another person's free will. You can care deeply and still protect your peace. You can hope for reconciliation and still continue growing. You can believe that something meaningful happened without allowing that belief to keep you trapped in waiting. You can honor the past without sacrificing your present. Type Amen 666 if you are choosing yourself while leaving room for what is genuine. Your person's response may have changed the direction of their own life, but your response to your life matters just as much. Let their choices belong to them and let your healing belong to you. If your paths are meant to cross again, let that meeting happen through honesty rather than desperation. If they return, let their actions speak. If they explain, listen with wisdom. If they apologize, watch for consistency. Type Amen 777 if you are ready to recognize actions over empty promises. And if you are currently experiencing silence, do not assume silence automatically means rejection. Sometimes people are processing, sometimes they are afraid, sometimes they are confused, and sometimes they are simply choosing a different direction. You do not need to create a story around every silence. You only need to remain grounded enough to recognize the truth when it becomes visible. Your peace should never depend on decoding another person's behavior. Type Amen 888 if you are releasing confusion and welcoming clarity. The most powerful part of this entire message is not that someone asked your person to forget you. The most powerful part is that your person was finally forced to confront what they truly wanted before making a permanent decision. They could have agreed simply to make everyone comfortable. They could have accepted another relationship because it looked easier. They could have allowed pressure to determine their future. Instead, they chose honesty. Type Amen 999 if honesty is the foundation you want in every relationship. And now the energy of this story reaches its final turning point. Your person has realized that forgetting you is not something another person can command, and moving toward marriage is not something they should do simply because others believe the timing is right. They understand that another person's heart deserves honesty. They understand that your memory deserves acknowledgement. They understand that their own future deserves a decision made from clarity rather than pressure. That realization may become one of the most important lessons of their life. Type Amen 1010 if you are ready for a future built on truth. So, my beloved child, release the need to know every detail today. Release the need to chase every answer. Release the fear that someone else can erase your importance simply because they enter another person's life. What you experienced mattered because it changed you. What your person experienced mattered because it changed them. Type Amen 1111 if you are allowing the truth to reveal itself naturally. If your paths cross again, let the connection be different this time. Let communication replace guessing. Let consistency replace mixed signals. Let respect replace fear. And if your paths do not cross again, let this chapter still serve you by teaching you that you deserve someone who does not need to be pressured into choosing you. You deserve someone whose actions make their intentions clear. Type Amen 1212 if you know you deserve clarity. There is no need to compete with the person who was suggested to your person. There is no need to hate them. There is no need to prove that you are better. Your story is not a competition. Your worth is not measured against another individual. Type Amen 1313 if you are releasing comparison from your heart. The conversation that was meant to erase you ended up revealing your significance. The request that was meant to create a marriage instead created a moment of self-reflection. The pressure that was meant to force a decision instead gave your person the courage to admit that their heart could not simply be ordered into silence. That is the unexpected turn. That is the reason this message carries so much emotional weight. Type Amen 1414 if this unexpected revelation resonates with you. And if you have been waiting for someone to finally understand what they lost, remember this: you do not need to disappear from your own life while waiting for someone else to recognize your value. Keep growing. Keep living, keep becoming stronger, and allow your future to remain open. The right people will not require you to abandon yourself. The right connection will not demand that you become smaller to be loved. Type Amen 1515 if you are stepping into a stronger version of yourself. If you wish to express your support further, you have the option to give super thanks, with contributions of up to $20. Let this final message settle gently into your heart. Someone may have asked your person to forget you, but your person's response revealed that emotions cannot be erased through pressure, convenience, or another person's expectations. Your story is still yours, your future is still yours, and your worth has never depended on whether someone chooses to return. Type Amen 1616 if you receive this message with an open heart. Walk forward with dignity. Carry the lessons without carrying the pain. Keep your heart open to genuine love while keeping your boundaries strong. And if a new chapter is waiting for you, let it arrive through truth, peace, consistency, and mutual choice. Let the person who belongs in your future meet you with honesty instead of confusion, with courage instead of fear, and with actions that finally match their words. Type Amen 1717 if you are ready for the chapter that honors your heart. My beloved child, the conversation may have started with someone saying, "Forget them and get married," but it ended with your person realizing that a heart cannot be forced into a decision simply because someone else has already chosen the outcome. What was supposed to be a simple suggestion became a mirror, and in that mirror your person saw the truth they had spent so much time avoiding. They saw the memories they had buried, the feelings they had denied, the mistakes they had made, and the possibility that their silence had created more pain than honesty ever could. They understood that moving forward does not mean pretending